was great at college football as well. Let's talk about a few of these games there. Additionally, I think the game of the weekend coming in, you could argue it was Florida State, Miami, but I think it was probably Alabama, Vanderbilt. All the noise that Diego Pavia was talking about, saying that if they play their game, it's not going to be close. And, obviously Pavia and the Commodores, Clark Lee doing a tremendous job with that program, what they were able to do last year, knocking off Alabama, who at the time was the number 1 ranked team in the country. The final score was 30-14. It was a lot closer than that. The Tide had a garbage time touchdown, as time basically expired in that game, which, by the way, covered the spread for them in that game. But Ty Simpson, it's time we have the conversation that he's the best quarterback in the country. It feels like him and Sayin for Ohio State are the two best right now. They asked Ty Simpson to do a lot. In contrast to Sayin, he's not really asked to do a ton, and obviously he's got much better players around him. But Ty Simpson, he can absolutely spin it. He can make all the throws. Had the interception that he overcame early in the game. It was on 4th down. It actually worked out for Alabama, right, that it was picked off from a field position standpoint. But he's got athleticism. He can escape when the pocket collapses. He can run. He's athletic. He can make all the throws. He's got a great arm. He's accurate with the football. I mean, Ty Simpson looks like a guy that can play NFL football. Like, that looks like it's something that is a realistic conversation for him at some point. He has been terrific. Kalen DeBoer settling in. He had the adversity early. You're sitting there at home, you kind of get ambushed a little bit, you're behind, and next thing you know, Vanderbilt's driving and about to go up 14-0 on you, and then you force the turnover on Pavia in the red zone. That was the key in the game, right? Again, 30-14, it's not that close. No, it was a very close game, and Vanderbilt turned the ball over twice in the red zone of Alabama, and coming up with those key turnovers is what allowed Alabama to win the game. You forced the fumble on Pavia, Keon Sabb, a big interception against Pavia in the red zone there as well. Massive win for Alabama because, you beat Georgia, and it's like, all right, well, you got another ranked opponent here. You're coming back home. Let's see what you got again. And they played like a really good football team. That team has done a 180 since they lost week 1 against Florida State. Really, really impressive what Kalen DeBoer has been able to do, especially if everybody down south basically calling for his head, calling him for to be fired, basically saying he's incompetent, a guy that had no business replacing Nick Saban. Well, his team looks pretty good right now, and they've got another tough game this week as they go on the road. It's a noon game early against Missouri. We'll preview that game later in the week. Nobody talking about Missouri. They're undefeated, by the way. Maybe have the best running back in the country. That's going to be an incredible college football game and another opportunity for Alabama to prove themselves once again. But they are very much on upset alert as they travel to Missouri next week. Miami, the Hurricanes, they won 28-22. Again, I feel like we've said this several times. It was not a 28-22 game. Miami absolutely dominated that game. And I think we'll have to sit there and say Miami's real. Offensive line, they block, they can run the football. The freshman wide receiver, Tony, he's unbelievable. Carson Beck, he looks poised. Defense, they fly around and make plays. Their secondary is good. Ruben Bain, one of the best defensive players in college football. He is terrific, and they came into a hostile environment, Doak Campbell Stadium, rivalry game, a series in which they have dominated here recently, and they continued to dominate it. Got to give a lot of credit to Mario Cristobal. His team showed up. They were ready to play from the beginning of that game, from the kickoff. They were ready to go in there and assert their will on Florida State. That's exactly what they did. Castellanos, he made too many mistakes in the game. They kind of just got punched in the mouth a little bit. That gadgety, style that Florida State has, that Malzahn style. Clearly, it worked against Alabama. So Alabama was just kind of soft in that game. But when you have a really physical team with a really athletic front that Miami has, it's not going to work. And clearly, it did not work. They were able to make it close late. Again, scoreboard-wise, but that game was in hand at that point as Miami absolutely dominated that game. The question with the Hurricanes is, can they continue this dominance? They don't really, when you look at their schedule, they don't really play anybody throughout the rest of this. So I think you have issues in terms of, okay, whether or not they're going to get tested, right? Because if they don't get tested and then they're in a spot in the playoff and all of a sudden they're in a close game in the fourth quarter, they might not know what to do. That's what happens with some of these teams that play in these weak conferences that don't play a ton of great football games, and I think Miami certainly fits that bill. We'll see if they find themselves in a close game, but it looks like they're locked to make the playoff at this point. And, it's college football. That's why you play the games. Upsets happen, but it's hard to imagine them losing a game based on the product that they have put on the field. Sometimes these teams, they're undefeated and they have these weak schedules, but you kind of look at them and you're like, yeah, we know you're not for real. You're a little bit fraudulent. Miami looks for real, right? Again, they're not going to face the same adversity that some of these other top teams face, but I believe they would be able to go in there and compete with an Oregon, compete with an Ohio State, compete with an Alabama, compete with a Georgia, compete with an A&M, compete with some of these best teams in college football. But obviously their schedule is very, very weak, and we will see if that hurts them later in the year. Huge upset of the weekend. Penn State goes to UCLA and loses 42-37. I had been kind of waiting once we got this conference realignment where one of these teams would have to go out west, all right, and play in an earlier type of game, not a night game, and go out there and lose. I had been waiting for it to happen, and leave it to James Franklin and Penn State for doing that. Credit to UCLA. They jumped on them from the start, right, and then they onside kicked them, and it was just like, whoa, next thing you know, Penn State's down double digits, and they're in a spot where I was like, ain't no way they ever thought they were going to be down in the football game. And you got to give credit to Nico Iamaleava, right? He's been bad over the course of this season to this point. Obviously, UCLA winless coming into this game, and they had played some out-of-conference teams that aren't very good at football, and they were losing those games as well. Iamaleava, he made the plays with his legs. He was terrific outside the pocket, extending quarterback run stuff. Was unbelievable. New play caller for UCLA. What a great story that is. Neuheiser, I believe is his last name, Jerry Neuheiser. His dad works for CBS. UCLA ties for a long time. He used to be a quarterback at UCLA. He gets an opportunity to call the plays, and the team clearly rallied around him. Great shot of him kind of getting carried off the field after that game. Embarrassing that was the crowd that turned out for UCLA. I mean, what a great venue. It's, in my opinion, the best place to play college football is the Rose Bowl, and they don't even come close to even partially filling that place out. So the crowd's certainly not a factor in this game for Penn State, but that's clearly the worst loss of James Franklin's career. Penn State now unranked. The fact that they were at the top in the preseason, I don't know why we do this. I don't know why I'm saying we. I don't know why the country does this. The AP does this, where they act like Penn State's good. I think we all know that they're not. Penn State, to be honest with you, it solely exists just to give Ohio State a top 10 win. That is the whole reason they exist, seemingly. But that really, really bad loss for them. I mean, we'll see if UCLA can get some momentum here going forward and win some more games. But it doesn't feel like they're going to be able to win a ton of games here this season. And the fact that Penn State lost to them, they still have life, right, if they win out. But obviously they cannot afford to slip up anymore. And they do have Ohio State on the schedule, which I got no reason to believe that they're going to be able to even give Ohio State a fight. And we'll see if people put James Franklin on the hot seat. He's continued to lose big games, but the thing that had kept him safe was the fact that Penn State always beat the teams that they should beat. That changed on Saturday when they went across the country, played UCLA, and lost. It'll be interesting if we see this continue. I mean, the fact that you're a Big Ten team having to go out and play in California and not play at night, that's big. And I think we're going to see more upsets like this as we progress in Big Ten play. Florida knocks off Texas 29-21. I didn't think they would be able to score enough points to hang in there this game. DJ Lagway, the talent's always been there. Nobody's questioned that, but it was his inability to throw the football to the correct team, which had really hurt him this season. And he settled in, and he played really good football against, I said it last week, thought Texas was the second best team in the country, and they scored 29 points on him. Clearly outplayed Arch Manning in the game. Florida only had one win at the time, but the swamp was still very much there, still very much a factor in the game. Arch Manning played better than he did against Ohio State, but clearly not even close to good enough. Had the 2 interceptions. They were not good. Did make some good plays, extending, off-script stuff, made some plays with his legs in the game there as well. But, I thought that Arch Manning just needed to be competent in the game for them to be able to win. Turns out he needed to be a little bit more than that, considering what Florida was able to do, and he had the turnovers, and he wasn't able to do it. And it's the guy that many people thought would win the Heisman Trophy coming in. People thought Texas would win the national title. Now they have 2 losses, and they got to run the table in order to get into the college football playoff, and their schedule is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So certainly growing pains with Arch Manning as the quarterback at Texas. Another game where Sark had just, people put him up there with the Kirby Smarts and the Ryan Days and the Dan Lannings of the world. And to be honest with you, I got respect for Sark, but I'm not quite sure that he belongs in that conversation. To be completely honest with you, we'll see if Texas can bounce back. Obviously, having a big one coming up against Oklahoma. No John Mateer, so that gives them an opportunity. But, a lot of people expected Texas to be a lot better, but it's a bad loss. Billy Napier seemingly does this. It's the annual, Billy Napier trying to save his job tour where he starts out awful, they lose all these games, then his team plays really hard and they get some big wins, then he sticks around for the next year. They do this on an annual basis, and knocking off a top 10 team in Texas is just the latest example of that. Texas beat Houston 35-11. That was our one best bet of the weekend that actually played out the way we thought. Texas Tech's a really good team. They're going to be in my top 10 this week. What they were able to do, Baron Morton coming back, he looked good. They got a capable backup in Will Hammond. They're good along the defensive line. They've got skill guys. They spent a ton of money in NIL this offseason, and it's working out. Got to give Texas Tech a lot of credit. Clearly the best team in the Big 12 and look like they have a direct shot, barring a collapse, to the college football playoff this season. Impressive win for them. Cincinnati, the Bearcats, they pick up a big-time win, and we will spend time going forward on the show talking about the Cincinnati Bearcats because, quite frankly, they deserve it. I mean, they're a player mistake or two away from beating Nebraska and being undefeated this season. This is a good team, Iowa State. Obviously, Vegas knew something, right? I walked right into the trap. I didn't understand how UC was favored in that game. I knew, too, that they had both corners out. They had injuries all over their defense, but I still thought they were the better football team. I clearly was wrong. Got to give a lot of credit to Scott Satterfield. Biggest win of his career here as the head coach at UC. Brendan Sorsby is playing like a really good quarterback. How about that? And this Bearcat team playing with some physicality. That run from Walker, where he just absolutely ran over that linebacker for Iowa State. That is awesome. And if they can play with that chip on their shoulder, which I didn't know they were capable of doing, to be completely honest with you, but if they can play with that level of physicality and that level of toughness, they've got some skill guys that can propel them over the top. I didn't think this team was built to be that tough, but they showed some serious toughness. That's a blue-collar, tough team in Iowa State. They kind of beat them at their own game, right? And they were more disciplined than Iowa State in the game as well. When you think about Matt Campbell and his teams, you think about discipline, you think about buttoned up, you think about not making mistakes, not shooting themselves in the foot, being tough. And Cincinnati checked all of those boxes in that game against Iowa State. A really impressive win for them. I think they probably should be ranked. I don't believe that they are, but if they continue in this direction, they are going to be ranked. And I just said Texas Tech is clearly the best team in the Big 12, but shoot, UC keeps this up. Maybe they can enter that conversation. I know there were some people around the program that thought there was an opportunity, given the experience on this team, that they could take a step in the right direction and be competitive this year. I didn't think they were going to be able to do that, admittedly, with Scott Satterfield at the helm. But a really good start to this season for UC. That is a massive win at Nippert Stadium as they knock off a ranked opponent, number 14, Iowa State. Lastly, Ohio State. Look, Minnesota's terrible. PJ Fleck, I got respect for him, but it's a conference game, but I mean, come on, Ohio State's schedule. They got Illinois this week. Penn State's garbage, right? They're not going to struggle with Illinois, even though it's on the road, right? Nobody's really going to test Ohio State, but you got to give them a lot of credit because when you sit there and watch them play, you sit there and go, who's going to beat this team, right? And it's like, can Oregon get them? I think Oregon's really good. Yeah, we'll see. Can A&M get them? Can Alabama get them? The quarterback's really, really good. I'm waiting for people nationally to wake up to that. I said earlier in the show, I think Ty Simpson and Julian Sayin are the two best quarterbacks in the country, and I don't think it's very close. And I get Sayin's got a lot of help. I get he's got a great offensive line and the best weapons in the world and a good head coach, but Julian Sayin's really, really good, and that defense is real. Again, only giving up 3 points. I mean, they haven't given up more than 10 points in a game. Unbelievable. What that defense has been able to do with Matt Patricia. Kind of feels like it's going to be a one-year deal for him, kind of similar to Chip Kelly. Based on what he's doing, I think he's going to get a shot to be a DC again in the NFL, right? I mean, it just kind of feels like a matter of time. Obviously, if you're Ohio State, you're hoping he sticks around because what he is doing with the athletes that he has on defense is unbelievable. And, I scratch my head and I wonder, can anybody beat Ohio State? I think there's a lot of parity in college football. There's a lot of good teams, but one team clearly sticking out above the rest, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. But the schedule, very, very weak. Illinois is ranked. Yeah, okay. I don't anticipate that being much of a battle, but it is on the road and it is an earlier game, so we'll see. Big noon. We'll preview that later in the week. Illinois, Ohio State, and Alabama, Missouri. Two great noon games next Saturday. That should be a lot of fun.